Thank you, David. Thank you, Michael. That was amazing as always. So thank you everyone for choosing to be part of this spiritual community today. And for those of you from out of town who actually figured out the time change and made it here, congratulations. We start a new monthly theme today, grateful for it all. It's wonderful when we remember and practice it successfully. There are times, though, when this is one of the most challenging ideas in New Thought. How can we be grateful for all of it when it looks like our world is in a difficult spot? Or many of them. Some would say upside down, inside out, and completely messed up. One of the things that makes science of mind so challenging for people is that we don't pretend the hard ideas and hard experiences don't exist. We recognize they don't exist. And we remember that they're not in charge of us. They're not in charge of our experiences. And this takes work and it takes practice, regular practice. So how do we do that? One of the stories that Rosamund Zander told in Pathways to Possibility, which is not the book that we read, it's the one that came after that, was of Ernest Shackleton and his crew in their first attempt to cross Antarctica. He posted this advertisement when he went to enlist his crew. Men wanted for a hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of darkness, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition only in case of success. Makes you want to sign up, right? Just hurry out there and sign up for hardship. He didn't pretend like it was going to be an easy trip, a little day trip, down to the park or the lake. And it wasn't. Their ship, the Endurance, don't pick a name like Endurance. I mean, yuck. Their ship, the Endurance, got trapped in the pack ice in Antarctica. And after almost a year of being trapped, the ship was crushed by the moving pack ice. They ended up having to abandon ship and camp on the ice floes for 5 months. And then when the ice floes started breaking up under them, they sailed in their salvaged lifeboats to a rocky, uninhabited bit of land called Elephant Island. I neglected to mention that this whole thing started in 1914, so they were without any modern conveniences and no way to communicate with anyone in any way other than in person. So after 5 months, Shackleton took a crew of 5 in one of the lifeboats, the best one that they had reinforced as best they could, and headed back to nearest civilization, which was 800 miles away, through the worst seas in the world at the worst time of year. They landed on the wrong side of South Georgia Island, which was the whaling station they had left 18 months before, and had to climb across the island, 26 miles of mountain and glacier that had been considered impassable. This is just like crazy making, right? Barely alive, they made it to the whaling station. And then 4 months later, Shackleton returned to Elephant Island to rescue the men he'd left behind. It's important to know that nobody died. In this whole story, not one person died in all those months of hardship. How was this possible? Shackleton might not have been the brightest sailor in the world, but he remained consistently positive in his outlook, and he forbid any expression of negativity or despair. He just wouldn't hear it. He wrote, "Optimism is true moral courage." And he led his crew from that mindset. His first mate, Frank Wilde, was in complete agreement and knew that it was this mental discipline that mattered. And it wasn't just a matter of behavior. You didn't have one thought and act differently. There had to be congruence between the two, thinking aligning with behavior. Frank and the crew of 22 that was left behind on Elephant Island waited 4.5 months for rescue without ever really believing they'd be rescued. But they kept their wits about them and prepared for rescue. Every single day, the sea was clear of ice. They rolled up their sleeping bags and they got their gear together, expecting to see the boat come rescue them. The practice of discipline is in keeping the story straight in their heads, in our heads. There couldn't be any room for any other story. Because if they let themselves tell themselves the story of their poor odds, the unlikeliness that they would be rescued, the unlikeliness that they would survive, that fault of thinking would have almost certainly killed the men. After rescue, they returned to civilization, failing to achieve their objective, and they all lived through the experience. Much to my amazement, and this did blow my mind when I was reading it yesterday, many of the same crew signed up for Shackleton's next voyage to Antarctica a few years later. How strong does our perception and our sense of awareness have to be that we can look nasty ugly in the face and say, I see you, you're not in charge of me. This is hard. This is really, really hard. And it was in their skill set and it's in ours. And it's discipline and it's intention and it's will. So there we are, right? Gratitude for it all. In the daily reading from yesterday, Dr. Daniel Morgan, who founded the CSL, the Guidance CSL in Greater Los Angeles, wrote, if we regard the fulfillment of our purpose as depending on any circumstance, past, present, or future, we are not making use of our power. We have no foundation and have descended to the level of secondary causes, which is the region of doubt, fear, and limitation. Dr. Morgan hit on a very universal experience. It's so easy to not make use of our power. It's so easy to forget that we have a foundation and to not use it on purpose. And then we have no choice but to descend to this level of secondary causes, which is where doubt, fear, and limitation live. And anytime we find ourselves wallowing in fear, doubt, and limitation, we're playing in the imaginary land of ain't it awful? And we have forgotten the spiritual truths, goodness, wholeness, light, love, peace, joy, harmony, balance, and order. We've also forgotten that every single one of us has the capability of managing our own innate and inherent resources. It's just discipline. It's just practice. It's just getting back up and trying again when we discover we've forgotten. Holmes wrote in Shelley's favorite book, This Thing Called You, page 82, what thought has planted, thought can uproot. The conditions laid down by mental attitudes, whether or not you are conscious of them, can be changed. If you are experiencing some condition which is unhappy, you must know or remember that there is nothing in you that holds it in place. Nothing in you that believes it must be this way. Turn your mind entirely from the condition and think in exactly the opposite manner. So, how do we do that? The same way we do anything: practice, 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 practice. If we want a different experience than the one we're having and reinforcing, consciously or unconsciously, we have the responsibility, we have the authority, and we're the only ones that can do this, to focus on that which we desire to experience more of and not focus on its opposite. In yesterday's reading from Courage, Conviction, and Consciousness, a woman named Georgia Carmichael Maxwell wrote, "God gives us life and we must accept it. No one lacks faith, for faith is an inherent part of our nature. We only need to exercise the faith we have in order to gain greater achievement." She quotes Emerson, who wrote, "We cannot contract, make smaller the infinite. We must expand the finite." The person who seems to lack faith is thinking of themselves, not God. They think about their problem, not the solving of it. In order to expand the finite, we must put our faith in the infinite. Some of the qualities of faith are vigilance, obedience to law, perseverance, confidence, and devotion. We don't think of these as very spiritual qualities, do we? It sounds like a lot of work. The disciplined thinker expands and develops the kind of faith that moves mountains: mountains of disease, mountains of unhappiness, mountains of lack. So, how do we remember the greater spiritual truth that the divine presence is everywhere, in everyone, and in everything, whether we see it or not? And how do we remember that there is no spot where God is not? Ernest Holmes in Creative Mind, page 97, wrote, "By giving thanks that we already have the thing we pray for, by completely believing and never doubting. When ye pray, believe that ye have received and ye shall receive." This is a basic premise of manifestation, but we're taking it up a level. We're amping it up because it's beyond acquiring stuff. This is about having a life that works, no matter what. The rest of the quote is, "We must be sure that in no way shall we think, act, talk, or read about limitation. We must be a law unto ourselves." Well, that kind of puts it on straight, doesn't it? Apostle Paul wrote in the Christian Bible about putting on the whole armor of God as protection and defense. Holmes wrote about it too in the Science of Mind text, page 494. To be strong in the Lord is to be sure of ourselves. Because we are sure of the principle of life, which manifests itself through us. We wrestle not against outward things, but against inward ideas and beliefs. The power of darkness is the power of false belief and superstition. If one can change their inner concept, their whole life will be changed. All cause is from within. All effect, all experience is forever without. So I've been taking this story writing class for a couple of months now. And one of the guys that's in the group also does a video production called True Theater. He's out of Cincinnati, I think. And so he invited all of us to come watch this quarter's True Theater production, which is a group of 5 storytellers who get up and tell their story on the Zoom camera. And this particular one was a woman named Arlene, who told a story that she had held in her mind since she was 10 about living life in a more equitable future. And the reason for her focus of her mind, a more equitable future, happened to her when she was 10. Her mother would send her and her little brother to the neighborhood grocery store around the corner to get groceries, which should be fun because it's such a grown-up thing to do. But it wasn't fun because they were poor and they used food stamps. And the cashier at the grocery store was mean and disrespectful to poor Black people. Arlene realized at that moment when she was 10 that she didn't ever want anybody else to feel the way she did, standing there hearing those hateful words and seeing those hateful looks that the cashier gave to her. So as Arlene grew up, she continued to look for ways to improve her own life and to also help others to improve theirs so that no one would feel inferior because of their economic status or their race. Her vision was about treating people with dignity and respect no matter what. And she had a moment of reflection when she realized as an adult she lived on the same street as that cashier who had been so respectful to her as a child. She wanted to gloat for a minute and then realized that no, treating people with dignity and respect even included the cashier. And Arlene currently works for a consulting firm that helps businesses improve their workplace equity issues, learning to treat their employees and their customers better, regardless of their socioeconomic level, race, gender, sexual orientation, or their age. And at the very end of her story, she expressed gratitude to this horrible cashier for inspiring her to become who she became as she grew up. So I want to close with a little bit of a reading from this thing called You, pages 101 and 102. Stop blaming anyone or anything, persons, circumstances, or situations for what may be happening to you. This is futile. It's a dead-end road. It's a blind alley. It's a raft adrift on an ocean of uncertainty. Today, you are going to take your own life in your own hands, realizing God is ever with you. You are going to identify yourself with goodness and joy. Straight thinking is going to do this for you. Straight thinking is not the easiest thing in the world, but it is possible for anyone. And then he gives a little prayer. Say, the spirit within me is alive, awake, and aware. It always flows through me in perfect life. I accept my spiritual perfection. I know that my physical being is included in that. It is a manifestation of the life, the energy, the love, the peace, and the power, which is of spirit. I know this is the day in which I live. This present time, which is now, is perfect. Everything in my world works harmoniously, divinely. I live in a completeness of this present moment. I know the all wisdom guides me, the all power protects me, and the all presence goes with me. It's a tall order, but it's in our skill set to do exactly that. Each one of us has within ourselves the ability to engage that divine presence that lives as us and to step into life as we wish to see it, as we choose to see it. So take a breath, get back up on your horse, grab a hold of the paddles, and steer your boat in the direction you want to go. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So I want to roll straight into the prayer. This space of of divine holy presence that lives and encompasses all of life that I know and I don't, that encompasses all beings, those that I love, those that I'm neutral for, and those that I just as soon not see. Every God is in all. There is no spot that God is not. And so I lift up my consciousness. I expand my awareness and I intend and put my attention on seeing God in all. Because from that elevated point of view, I can see the divine spark. I can see that holy presence. I can see clearly that light and love and joy and peace and power and harmony and order that live as all. So I breathe into that and I remember, even though I will forget and fall off and want to be grumpy, there is a part of me that remembers and knows. There is a part of me that has the skills, that has the ability, has the willingness and the wherewithal to see as God sees. So I choose that focus. I choose that intention. I choose that vision. And I know that this is as true for everyone else as it is true for me, because each is already divine walking around with their own, wearing their own skin. That presence, that power, that joy, that light, that love of the oneness, of the allness, of the wholeness lives as each. So I bless this awareness. I bless this knowing. I bless this great big truth. And I celebrate being able to see it and to enact it as often as I do. Thankful for this opportunity to see and be and know and uplift the consciousness of humanity. I relax, knowing it's already done. I allow and I let it be. And so it is.
So it is.